Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to Judging 102, How to Get a Good Panelist. This is intended to be follow-up to Caitlin's lovely seminar on Tuesday, so if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go check out the recording and or the slide deck. My name is Brenden. I judge sometimes, and this is kind of supposed to be more of, especially because many of you are judging an HRE for the first time, sort of how specifically each panel, what deliberation kind of looks like, and some sort of tips and tricks to help you along the learning journey. We'll cover a few things today. So first, what exactly is a panelist? Some judging etiquette, tracking things you should do during the round, avoiding some common forms of bias, deciding on initial call, how to deliver, which will be the bulk of the presentation, and then voting. So yeah, this is something that you should think about in all your rounds when you're debating or judging. Debate's comparative. Nothing exists in a vacuum. The best point in one room could be the worst point in another room, and vice versa. Always consider things in the context of the round. My good friend Marcus Aurelius taught me this. Yeah. So this is what we're voting from. What exactly is a panelist? So a panelist is kind of like a supporting judge, and you're responsible for tracking the round and engaging in deliberation to help the chair come to a decision. You're kind of there to offer different perspectives and interpretations of the round. You don't have to agree on everything. That's the point. To have different opinions and interpretations to come to a consensus or not. You're not expected to run a debate or deliver an OA. And a trainee is functionally the same as a panelist. So if you're a trainee, you do the same things as a panelist, except you don't vote. Unless your chair is David, then you might let you vote. But essentially, if you get promoted from trainee to panelist, you do the same thing, but you just get to vote. We'll talk about that later. Judging etiquette. Hopefully this is pretty intuitive, but it's good to cover it. Your chair might ask if someone wants to give time signals, that is, giving a clap, or hitting like the table or something when the time starts and ends, or when a speech is over. This is helpful, but you don't have to do it. So if you're not comfortable doing this and flowing, don't worry about it. Don't touch anyone or their notes / stuff without their express permission. I shouldn't have to say this. I've seen it happen too many times though. If you do this, you're going to be a trainee forever. So keep your hands to yourself. During the delib, make sure to answer the question that's actually being asked. If your chair asks you, don't start talking about CG. Keep your contributions concise and brief as possible. There's a lot of things to talk about. There's many people that want to talk. So try not to yap, just out of respect for the limited time. And lastly, again, hopefully pretty intuitive, don't talk over the chair or other panelists. This is just not very good manners. So tracking. So you should check out the Tuesday seminar for a more in-depth guide of sort of how we can consider something an argument to be true. But generally, something that you should be focused on during tracking is not being a court stenographer and like typing everything down word for word, but you should sort of be trying to evaluate the debate as it happens. So as different arguments, verifications come up, I like to sort of ask myself some guiding questions as the round going on. So you can read these here, but it's kind of just like, what exactly is this argument? What is the support or analysis that's been given to this argument? How does it interact with arguments from other teams? Similar things for reputation. What is the ref? What is it targeting? Why is it successful? Why is it not? These are good things to ask yourself to sort of kind of evaluate how effective content is from teams as it comes up. So let's talk about some common pitfalls and maybe biases that I think a lot of judges, both new and experienced, kind of fall into. The first one is overcrediting an argument because you thought of it already. Sometimes when you see emotion, you'll hook a really cool case, and then some team will run a version of your case, and you go, "Oh my god, I ran that case. That's so good." This can kind of trick you into thinking that maybe you provided more math than they did. Maybe you think that they analyzed it better than they actually did. So just be careful. This is why I tend to avoid thinking of cases for either side before around judging that might end up biasing you. So just be aware of that. Second is don't undercredit arguments just because you can think of ref to it. If it's something absurd, if a team comes up and says Chinese people don't exist, obviously you are allowed to claim this is absurd, but if just because some quote unquote obvious ref might be available to a point, if another team doesn't say it, that ref doesn't exist within the round. So that's not a reason why you should be undercrediting or not crediting a point. Third is overcrediting an argument because you believe it personally. I think it's smart. Maybe an argument aligns with your political beliefs. Maybe you just think, oh, it's such a big break point, I wish I thought of that. That doesn't inherently make the point more persuasive. Just be sure to check that if you think that if you agree with the point, try to see what's actually present in the round. The opposite is also true. If you disagree with an argument personally, or you think it's like stopped or generic, if it's well supported, you should credit it. An argument being like obvious or stock is not a genuine reason that it should be prioritized over other points. And lastly, don't credit an incomplete argument because you know it to be true based on specialized background knowledge and public spec. So someone comes up and says, in the long run, consumers always bear the incidence of corporate taxes. Since I've taken the econ course, maybe I know that to be true, and I know the analysis in my head as to why that's true. The average intelligent voter probably doesn't. So without further analysis that's accessible to the average voter, you probably should not be crediting that point. There's a bit of judgment involved in what's spec and what's not. And that's sort of something that you'll just learn about over time. But if it's something that you think the average like person who reads newspapers would not reasonably know that is not in that field, it's from spec. So yeah, how much of an initial call? After the debate ends, your chair will give you a few minutes to look over your notes, and you'll be asked to give an initial call, which is arranging a team from first to fourth. Even if you're not 100% sure, just write something down. A wrong call, quote unquote, doesn't harm people to live. Most calls are wrong that are true. But not having a call does make things quite difficult for discussion. So even if you think a call is shaky, just put something on the paper. That's what Lib is for, to sort of sort things out. During the round, try to compare teams as they speak. Evaluating individual pairings, which you call splits, can help sort of make your initial call a lot easier. For example, after the front half is done, sort of ask yourself, is OG winning? Is OO winning? Why is this the case? Sort of evaluating teams in pairs as you go along makes coming to your initial call at the end a lot less daunting. Lastly, a team who places in second, for example, needs to beat each team below it individually. So be sure to analyze things in splits, in pairs. There's lots of justifications why a team would beat another team, and we'll get into a few of those in a little bit. So let's go into the meat of this seminar, which is deliberation. And this is kind of focused on how to answer target questions from your chair. Delivering as a panelist and chair is a very good skill set. So essentially how a deliberation works is your chair is going to ask you some guiding questions. So after noting down all the judges' initial calls, your chair might ask you to explain your reasoning for a certain split or what you able to credit for a certain team. So common questions are things like, why do you have CG over OO? Or what are you able to credit from CO? Sometimes your chair will be more specific and say something like, oh, OG claims X but didn't prove Y. Can this still be credited? Why or why not? These typically happen towards the end of a deliberation when you're trying to get into the nitty-gritty stuff. But this is something that these are things you can expect from your chair. So supporting your call. So answering these questions is all about supporting your call or your stance on a particular split or point. Whenever you make a claim about a split or team's case, you gotta support it with evidence. In this case, the evidence is things that are actually said within the round. And it's okay if your reason is not 100% correct. Having a reason in the first place for your opinion is a great first step. Don't judge on vibes. Just because a team sounds like more confident, sounds like they're winning, that shouldn't be something that makes you believe that they're more persuasive. So let's go over some examples of how to more effectively respond to chair questions. On the left are things that I've heard from real judges and I think are bad, and on the right are maybe ways that we could potentially improve them. This pisses me off. If you say, oh, OG loses CG because OO didn't prove anything, I think you should be a trainee forever. Not only is this a little bit demeaning and rude to OO, but it adds nothing to Lib. And even if OO really didn't prove any substantial claims, there's nothing for other judges to respond to and think about. You kind of wasted everybody's time. So again, you gotta give some evidence as to why it is that OO didn't prove anything. So a very abstract example is just, oh, OO loses CG because they made claims A, B, and C and didn't provide any analysis for them. Or maybe the analysis is B. Talk about that. CG argues the point X and it supports it with analysis Y and Z, and CG can claim the impact F, which OO cannot do. Again, this is very sort of abstract, but the general structure is if you tell me that you can't credit any of the points of OO, you have to tell me why, and you have to tell me why CG has no content being credit, or some other reason why CG is winning. This is comparative. Comparative is good. And it sort of is able to give a reasoning for why you can credit or not credit a recommendation. So again, the two takeaways here is if you say that a point is not credible, or a point is bad, or a point is good, you have to tell the other judges why. and you should compare this to like the efficacy of other teams. Something that you should also shouldn't say, OG beats CG because CG is mad derivative. Why is CG derivative? So derivative is kind of just when a closing team claims can't really be credited because they are already proven in open. So even if CG comes up and says the exact same things as OG, or like very similar things as OG, you probably shouldn't say anything on the left because again, sure, so what? Why is this true? So maybe you could phrase it as I think CG is mostly derivative because their extension is X, Y, and Z, which was already proven by OG with, and you can talk about the mechanisms. You're sort of proving to the judges, to the other judges, why it is that you think CG's case is fundamentally the same as OG's. You can't just say it is derivative, you have to explain why. So again, this is a little bit of a judgment call. It does take some time, even if usually teams don't say the same things verbatim, but it's kind of up to you to decide if the substance of a closed use case is kind of the same as the. Let's talk about voting. So after the deliberation, oh, sorry. If the chair or another judge change your mind on a split, let them know so the chair can make note of it. Only flip or change your ranking if you're genuinely convinced. Don't feel pressured to flip just because you think the other judge is better. Even judges who go to a wooded sometimes make mistakes and have the wrong calls. If you're not convinced, don't feel pressured to flip. Don't be a submissive panelist. After 14, 15 minutes of deliberation, the chair will call a vote on any splits that are still disputed. And if the vote is not unanimous, the majority rules and the chair is a tiebreaker if necessary. They'll usually indicate in the RFP and OA if you're able to come to a consensus or not. Again, trades don't make votes, but you still do get to participate in everything that came before. To clean up. So after calls finalized, the panel will submit speaker scores and ballots. It differs in every tournament, so I'm not going to cover it here. As my good friend David said, it's some technical slop. Pay attention to the briefings, they'll be in the briefings. Chair will deliver an RFD and OA, and debaters might approach you for some feedback. If you have any, feel free to give it to them. So yeah, thanks for your attention. Hopefully we get to the round soon. Judging is tough. It's a weird activity. Don't be discouraged if you get a few calls wrong or fumbles some limbs. We've all been there. It's a normal part of the learning process, and there are many great judges at Hawk House or in the wider QSID who are more than happy to help you develop. Thank you.
Guys, do we know where Maya and Elwin are by any chance?